It was October 23rd, 2018, at 3:47 in the morning, when the security cameras at St. Mary's Hospital in Cedar Falls, Iowa, recorded for the last time Nurse Sarah Elizabeth Chen walking down the third-floor corridor. At 28 years old, Sarah had worked at that hospital for 5 consecutive years. She had never missed a single day of work. She had never abandoned her post. But on that cold autumn night, something made Sarah Chen simply disappear. What you are about to hear will make your blood run cold. If you enjoy real mystery cases that defy all logic, subscribe to the channel now and hit the bell, because I promise that by the end of this video, you will never look at a hospital the same way again. This is a case that remained unsolved for 4 entire years, until a discovery in the basement of the hospital itself revealed a truth so disturbing that it forever changed the small town of Cedar Falls. Sarah Elizabeth Chen was the type of person who lit up any room she entered. Born in Portland, Oregon, to immigrant parents from Taiwan, Sarah had moved to Cedar Falls in 2013, right after graduating from nursing school at the University of Iowa. At 5 feet 5 inches tall, with black hair always pulled back in an impeccable bun, and a smile that her colleagues described as contagious, Sarah quickly became one of the most beloved nurses at St. Mary's Hospital. She lived alone in a small apartment on Maple Street, just 10 minutes from the hospital. Sarah was meticulously organized. Her colleagues joked that she could find any medication in the supply room with her eyes closed. She had the habit of always arriving 15 minutes before her 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, and she always brought extra coffee for the night staff. Sarah didn't have a boyfriend at the time of her disappearance, but she maintained close contact with her family in Portland and spoke with her best friend, Jennifer Walsh, at least 3 times a week. Jennifer would later describe Sarah as the most responsible person I knew, someone who would never let other people down, especially her patients. Sarah's routine was as predictable as a Swiss watch. She worked 3 nights a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. On her days off, she attended the local gym at 6 a.m., shopped at the same Hy-Vee supermarket every Thursday, and watched movies at home on Sundays. She drove a blue 2015 Honda Civic, license plate number IAG 4729, which she always parked in the 3rd row of the hospital parking lot. But there was something about Sarah that few people knew. She had an almost obsessive curiosity about the history of St. Mary's Hospital. The building had been constructed in 1952, and Sarah frequently asked older employees questions about the past times, especially about areas of the hospital that had been renovated or closed over the years. Tuesday, October 23rd, 2018, began like any normal day for Sarah Chen. The weather in Cedar Falls was partly cloudy, with a temperature of 12 degrees Celsius, typical autumn weather in the American Midwest. Sarah woke up at 7:30 p.m., as she always did before night shifts. She took a shower, prepared a turkey sandwich to take to work, and at 8:45 p.m. sent a text message to Jennifer Walsh. "Another night at the hospital. Hope it's quiet." At 10:44 p.m., the security cameras recorded Sarah arriving at the parking lot. She parked in her usual spot, 3rd row, space 12. At 10:46 p.m., she passed through reception, greeted the night security guard, Robert Martinez, with the same cheerful, "Hi, Bob," as always. Bob would later describe Sarah's mood as completely normal. She even commented that she was looking forward to Halloween the following weekend. Sarah arrived on the 3rd floor at 10:48 p.m., 2 minutes before her usual time. She greeted her supervisor, Donna Williams, and took charge of her patients, 6 people in post-surgical recovery in the East Wing of the hospital. Sarah's first round of checks was at 11:15 p.m., everything normal. She recorded each patient's vital signs with her small, careful handwriting, as always. At 12:20 a.m., Sarah made her second round. The cameras show her walking through the corridors with confident steps, carrying her pink clipboard, a birthday gift she had received from Jennifer the previous month. She stopped to chat briefly with Dr. Michael Foster, who was on duty in the emergency room. They discussed the case of a diabetic patient in room 314. The conversation lasted exactly 4.5 minutes. At 2:30 a.m., Sarah should have made her third round of checks, but she didn't show up. The patient in room 308, Margaret Thompson, 67 years old, was in pain and rang the call bell at 2:45 a.m. No one came. At 3:15 a.m., Margaret rang the call bell again. That's when nursing assistant Linda Parker went to check what was happening. Linda looked for Sarah throughout the East Wing. Nothing. At 3:20 a.m., Linda alerted Donna Williams. At 3:25 a.m., they initiated a systematic search of the floors. At 3:30 a.m., they checked the bathrooms, the break room, the kitchenette. At 3:35 a.m., they went down to the second floor. At 3:40 a.m., they checked the first floor. The security cameras showed Sarah for the last time at 3:47 a.m., walking down the third-floor corridor toward the elevator. But here's the detail that made everyone's blood run cold. The elevator cameras didn't record Sarah entering. The stairway cameras didn't either. It was as if she had simply evaporated. At 4:15 a.m., Dr. Foster called the Cedar Falls police. The duty officer, Sergeant James McDonald, arrived at the hospital at 4:32 a.m. McDonald was a 15-year veteran of the local police force and had worked on hundreds of missing person cases. But he had never seen anything like this. The first thing we did was review all the security cameras, McDonald would later report. We had complete footage of Sarah entering the hospital, going up to the third floor, making her normal rounds, but after 3:47 a.m., it was as if she had vanished into thin air. Sarah's family was notified at 6 a.m. Her parents, David and Linda Chen, flew immediately from Portland to Cedar Falls. Jennifer Walsh drove 5 hours from Chicago, where she worked as a teacher, arriving at the hospital at 11 a.m. on Wednesday. Sarah would never do this, Jennifer told the police, with tears in her eyes. She's the most responsible person I know. Something terrible happened to her. The initial investigation revealed bewildering facts. Sarah's car was still in the parking lot with the keys in her purse, which was found in the nurse's locker room. Her cell phone was in her purse, fully charged, with no messages or calls after 8:45 p.m. Her spare uniform was still in the locker. Nothing had been taken. The hospital was completely sealed off on Wednesday morning. A team of 12 police officers searched every corner of the 6-story building. They checked every room, every closet, every bathroom. They brought in tracking dogs that followed Sarah's scent to the third floor, and then nothing. The dogs completely lost the trail in the corridor where Sarah was last seen. The medical community of Cedar Falls was in shock. Dr. Foster organized a volunteer search that attracted more than 200 people. They searched a 5-kilometer radius around the hospital, checked the Cedar River that ran behind the building, explored the nearby forest. For 3 consecutive days, helicopters flew over the area. Divers searched the river. Nothing. Sarah Chen had simply disappeared. The weeks turned into months, and the months into years. Sarah's family never stopped searching. David Chen even hired a private investigator, Marcus Rivera, who had worked as a detective in Chicago for 20 years. Rivera reviewed every piece of evidence, interviewed every hospital employee, examined every frame of the security cameras. In 30 years of career, Rivera told the local press, "I've never seen a case as impossible as this one. It's as if Sarah had simply ceased to exist." Theories began to circulate throughout the town. Some speculated that Sarah had run away to start a new life, but this theory was quickly discarded. There was no activity in her bank accounts, credit cards, or government records. Others suggested that she had been kidnapped. But how? The hospital had 24-hour security, cameras at all entry and exit points. No one had seen Sarah leave the building. The most disturbing theory suggested by some was that Sarah was still somewhere inside the hospital. But how would that be possible? The building had been completely searched multiple times. The case gained national attention in 2019 when it was featured on the investigation discovery program Disappeared. The family offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to Sarah's whereabouts. Hundreds of tips came to the police, but none led anywhere. Jennifer Walsh moved to Cedar Falls in 2020, determined to keep her best friend's memory alive. She organized annual vigils on the anniversary of the disappearance and constantly pressured the police to keep the case active. The hospital continued operating normally, but night staff reported a different atmosphere. Some employees requested transfers to other shifts. Others reported feeling watched during night shifts, especially on the third floor. In 2021, Sarah's family sued the hospital for negligence in security, but the case was dismissed for lack of evidence of institutional responsibility. For all practical purposes, Sarah Chen had become a ghost. On March 15, 2022, almost 4 years after Sarah's disappearance, St. Mary's Hospital began a major renovation to expand the emergency wing. The construction required extensive work in the hospital basement, an area that had been largely abandoned since the 1980s. The construction foreman, Tony Castellanos, was supervising the removal of old medical equipment in the disappearance basement when his crew found something unexpected, a wall that wasn't shown in the original architectural plans. The wall had been built with concrete blocks and white paint, but appeared newer than the rest of the basement. It didn't make sense, Castellanos would explain later. According to the plans, there should have been a corridor there, but there was a solid wall. We decided to investigate. When they knocked down the wall on March 16th at 2:30 p.m., the workers found a small space, approximately 3 by 4 meters, that had been completely sealed. And in the back of that space, they found the mortal remains of Sarah Chen. The police arrived in 15 minutes. The site was immediately cordoned off. Preliminary forensic analysis revealed that Sarah was wearing her nursing uniform, still with her hospital badge hanging around her neck. Next to the body was her pink clipboard. But the most shocking was yet to come. More detailed analysis revealed that Sarah had not died immediately. There were scratches on the concrete walls, marks suggesting that she had tried to escape. Remains of food and water were found at the site, indicating that someone had kept Sarah alive in that space for an indeterminate period. Forensic dating estimated that Sarah had died between 2 to 3 weeks after her disappearance. That is, she had survived in the sealed basement until mid-November 2018. The discovery raised a terrifying question. Who had built this makeshift prison? And how had Sarah gotten there? The forensic investigation revealed details that would make even the most experienced investigators lose sleep. The space where Sarah was found had been carefully prepared. There were signs that it had been used as a medical supply storage room in the 1970s and 80s, but had been specifically modified to confine a person. A rudimentary ventilation system had been installed, connecting to the hospital's air ducts. There was a bucket that served as an improvised bathroom. Remains of hospital food packaging were found, the type of pre-packaged meals provided to patients. Analysis of the hospital plans revealed that the original access to the space had been through a service corridor that connected directly to the freight elevators. These elevators were not monitored by the main security cameras, a security flaw that had gone unnoticed for years. The police concluded that Sarah had been taken to the basement on the night of her disappearance, probably unconscious, through the freight elevator. The person responsible had then sealed the space with a concrete wall, leaving Sarah trapped there. But who would do something so elaborate and cruel? The investigation focused on hospital employees with access to the freight elevators and knowledge about the abandoned areas of the basement. 3 people fit the profile: 2 maintenance technicians and a doctor who had worked at the hospital since the 1990s. Dr. Harold Brennan, 58 years old, had retired abruptly in December 2018, just 2 months after Sarah's disappearance. He had sold his house in Cedar Falls and moved to a small town in Arizona. When police went to interrogate him in April 2022, they discovered that Dr. Brennan had committed suicide 2 weeks earlier, leaving only an enigmatic note. Some secrets are too heavy to carry. In his house in Arizona, police found detailed plans of the St. Mary's Hospital basement and photographs of Sarah that he had apparently taken without her knowledge over the years. There was also a disturbing diary detailing his fascination with Sarah and his elaborate plans to keep her safe, a sick distortion that he apparently believed was love. The case was officially closed in June 2022, with Dr. Brennan being identified as responsible for Sarah Chen's kidnapping and death. But questions remain unanswered. How did he manage to take Sarah to the basement without being detected? Why didn't anyone question his sudden retirement? Were other employees involved? Sarah's family finally had their answers, but not the peace they sought. Sarah was buried in Portland, next to her grandparents, in a ceremony that attracted hundreds of people from Cedar Falls and beyond. St. Mary's Hospital implemented a completely new security system, with cameras in all elevators and service corridors. The basement was completely renovated and converted into a storage area with fully monitored access. Today, 5 years after Sarah's discovery, Cedar Falls still bears the scars of this horrible crime. Jennifer Walsh continues living in the city, working as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital itself, a way, she says, to honor her best friend's memory. Sarah loved taking care of people, Jennifer told me recently. The fact that she was betrayed by someone she trusted, in a place where she dedicated herself to, saving lives, is something that still haunts me. But Sarah wouldn't want us to stop caring for others because of this. The Sarah Chen case reminds us that monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes, they walk through the illuminated corridors of places we consider safest, wearing white coats and false smiles. And perhaps that's the most terrifying lesson of all, that true darkness can hide in the most unexpected places, patiently waiting for the right moment to act. What do you think about this case? Comment below with your theories. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next mystery.